Hey, this is Randall Foster from Symphonic Distribution. You are listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast with my friends Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From The Guardian, making music is about making assets for social media. Pop stars battle digital burnout.
From Yash Bagal, how TikTok creators are redefining success in the music industry.
And from Variety, Deadmau5 manager Dean Wilson talks DAOs, NFTs, crypto, and how to protect your IP in Web3. Get out your acronym decoder ring for all of this. This is Jay Gilbert and myself. It's the Your Morning Coffee podcast. Kick back, relax, because here we go right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. 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 On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
And Jay, it's a Saturday. I am in a rare display of being awake early-ish. We're starting a little early.
Yes, we are.
It's a rare day when I kind of roll out earlier than planned.
It
but
is.
Here I am.
Usually I get a little text from you like, yeah, can we start like 5 minutes later?
That's right. I'm such a slog in the morning. It's just like,
Oh, it's all good.
oh yeah. But I'm gonna see some music tonight. I'm gonna go see Jason Isbell in concert up in Santa Barbara. Looking forward to a little live music. Always fun, right? Always
Nice.
inspiring.
Let me know how that is. Where are you going? Is it Santa Barbara Bowl? Where is it?
No, it's at the Arlington Theater up in Santa Barbara. Which,
nice.
for those of you in Southern California, if you're listening in, if you haven't been to the Arlington, it is a fantastic venue. It's indoors and it's a theater. I'm trying to remember how much it seats. I don't know, maybe 1,200 or 1,000 or
I think
something
I
like
saw
that. So it's-
Jerry
it's
Seinfeld
probably less
there
than-
once. It's
Yes.
really cool. Yeah.
I've seen a bunch of different cool bands over the years there, and the inside is like it's designed to look like the courtyard of a mission.
Like you're outside.
So, like you're outside, and they have that kind of concave roof with so it
Yeah.
looks like it's dusk, and there's little stars in the ceiling. It's like it's a neat hang, and it's
Yeah.
it's
That'll
because the
be-
Santa Barbara
that'll be
Bowl,
good.
which is also a great venue. It's not quite that season yet, but
Yeah.
Santa Barbara has three actually. Then there's the Libero Theater up there, which is also a lovely venue to see music and.
You know,
very
I can
small.
get to Santa Barbara quicker than I can get downtown LA from my place. So
From your place, yeah.
Yeah.
Although they're working on the freeway, so the construction it can be a slog to get up there.
Yeah.
It's we'll see. I'm leaving early.
I
But
don't
anyway,
know.
live music.
Well, I don't know if I ever told you the story, but one time I was driving to work. This is when I worked at Universal, and I was just popping around listening to some different radio stations, and it picked up a Santa Barbara station, which was pretty cool. And I was listening to it on my drive home, and the DJ comes on and says, the third caller gets, free tickets to Jerry Seinfeld. So I just typed in the number, nothing, busy, hit, redial, nothing. I was going to do it like maybe one more time just for fun, and it went through. And it said, "What's your name?" And I told him, and he said, "You're the lucky winner." And I got like front row Jerry Seinfeld tickets.
Wow.
At that
I never
beautiful
win tickets.
venue, and it was a lovely night. He was absolutely hilarious.
That's fantastic. Nothing like going out and seeing live entertainment. And it's so nice to be even considering that after so long with not.
Yeah.
Yes. By the way, the guy that I get to chat with every week, he is Jay Gilbert, the curator of the Your Morning Coffee newsletter, which I'm sure you know, is weekly music news for the new music business, and a former executive with Universal, Sony, and Warner Music Groups, and of course voted in his high school class the most likely to rock. Yes.
That's genius, man. You just pulled that out of thin air. And I am very fortunate to have Mike Etchart as my co-host. He's a longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capitol EMI, and Universal. And Mike, how about that intro from Randall Foster over at Symphonic?
Yes. So we talk a lot about Symphonic and their sort of newsletter things and all the tips they do and what a great organization that is. So very nice of him to step into the booth and record a little intro for us.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Very nice. And by the way, we, of course, have wonderful sponsors that help Jay and I put the show together every week, without whom we would not be able to do the show every week. So our sponsors include the Music Business Association. In case you don't know, the 4-day Music Biz 2022 conference agenda has just been announced, taking place May 9th through 12th at the JW Marriott in lovely Nashville. You should be beating that's a little bit before the humidity kicks in, I think. Along with returning favorites like the Metadata Summit, #NextGenNow, DSP Workshops, and Brand Summit, to name just a few. You'll find timely new additions for 2022, including conversations on NFTs, gaming and immersive music experiences, catalog acquisitions, and much, much more. Jump over to musicbiz.org for more information on that super groovy conference where you will be at. And I think, are you going to be on a panel there, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah. I'm going to be on a couple of events there, which I'm really excited about. One is with Randall Foster, who did our intro. He's got a panel, and it's titled Navigating New Strategies, How A&R, Artist Marketing, and Distribution Come Together in the Age of Streaming. And I'll be a panelist on that, and I'm really excited to join Randall and Michael Burrows and the great folks over at Symphonic. But it's always a great conference, and I'm really looking forward to it because it's been a couple of years since we were able to do it in person. So I'm excited about that. Your Morning Coffee podcast is also brought to you by our friends at Bandzoogle, built by musicians for musicians. Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform that makes it easy to build a beautiful website and EPK for your music. All the features you need for a professional website, everything is built right in. Hosting and a custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, tools to sell your music and merch commission-free crowdfunding and fan subscription features, mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send newsletters, very important, social media integrations, and live support from their musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Your Morning Coffee podcast listeners can go to bandzoogle.com and just try it for free for 30 days. Just use a promo code Morning Coffee, all one word, and that will get you 15% off your first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code Morning Coffee.
And we are also sponsored by Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, it's consumed, it's marketed, and monetized. It is edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton. With considerable help from Owen Davis, Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Yeah, and speaking of Bands in Town, over 65 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist services platform, connecting over 550,000 artists with their super fans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard, and that will help them manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
Yes, indeed. So big thanks to the Music Business Association, Bandzoogle, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. Boy, we certainly appreciate their participation and help, and we could not do it without them. So, Jay, we've got a really interesting story we're going to start with. And I'm going to start with a bit of a story, too. You know, my dad's been gone for many years now, but he was alive when I was working at Universal, and I remember showing him my BlackBerry when we first got BlackBerries at Universal, and telling him that I could answer emails in the evening and get caught up and do all kinds of stuff. And the BlackBerry, to my way of thinking, was really the beginning, as an employee in the entertainment business, at least, of essentially the always on, every waking hour is a working hour. existence, which really still carries over today. And as somebody from a different generation, he was so surprised and couldn't really fathom, because in his era, when 5 o'clock came around or whatever that was, you were done for the day.
You turned off.
Went home and you didn't think about work at all. And we talk a lot on this show about all of the empowering things that are driving artist development and that artists can do for themselves to keep their brand essentially out in the in the verse of where we're as you're marketing yourself in the music industry. But there is such a cost to that, isn't there?
Yeah, and we're starting to learn more about that, right? And this article there's actually two of them that we're going to touch on, but the main one here was from The Guardian. The headline is "Making Music is About Making Assets for Social Media. Pop Stars Battle Digital Burnout." And we're also going to talk a little bit about mental health as we dig into this too, because this can be very taxing. But before we jump into the article, I jotted down a few notes, because you and I used to play in bands and do some touring, and it was a simpler time back then. So I kind of broke it out into two columns. Like, one is pre-internet, and there's only a few things that we used to do. We would write songs, record songs, release songs, and we'd perform live. And if you were fortunate enough to, maybe do some interviews at radio stations and a few other ancillary things. But really, it's write, record, release, perform, right? It was a pretty simple time. Now, I jotted down just a few things that some of my clients have to do. And the reason they have to do these things is, they go into it when they talk about Tegan and Sarah in this article, is that you're judged on your social footprint and your streams and all of these kind of data points. And you can lose out on maybe getting booked on a festival, or lose out on other opportunities because either A, your audience isn't big enough, or B, it's not trending in the right direction. We talk about if you get on one of these competition shows like, an American Idol, The Voice, America's Got Talent, one of those things, while you're on those shows, you have this incredible growth in audience and engagement. But a lot of times when you leave those shows, if you don't have a strategy, you have this big social footprint that's not trending in the right direction and is not engaged. So here are a couple of things, and then we can jump into the article. So I mentioned, pre-internet, write, record, release, perform. Pretty simple. Post-internet, to your point, I should say like post-BlackBerry, when all of these things came up. But Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, maybe Discord, Twitch for a lot of artists. A lot of artists are using LinkedIn. You have to be aware of things like Wikipedia. You have to have a website. You have to optimize for voice. There's all of these smart speakers, and you need to optimize for that. You need to create assets. And what I mean by that are like banner sets, coming soon, out now for all these different platforms. You have to create videos, lyric videos, pseudo videos, teaser videos, unwrapping videos, behind the scenes. And then you have to chop those up into little bite-sized chunks for maybe an 8-second Canvas video, or a 15-second, Instagram stories, or a Reels video. So you're also, all of this comes back to your responsible for engaging with your fans on these platforms. And then you can even go a step further, and you might have a Patreon or a Substack or an OnlyFans or a Cameo, or you're working with WhatsApp. And then on top of that, you've got all those other things: write, record, release, perform. And that perform may include live streaming. So that is a lot for artists today. And if you're not at the level of a superstar artist who has a team that will post in your voice and do things on your behalf and create these assets, if you're a developing artist or a middle class artist, as Tegan and Sarah point out, man, that it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming. And if you just look at the headline, making music is about making assets for social media.
Yeah, pop stars battle digital burnout, and that is really important. And and you and I have talked about this over the years quite a bit, which is, and by the way, do all that stuff, but also make music that makes me cry. or that I want to play over and over and over again. And it's like, wow, how can any human, and then just the blowback of social media, which is, there's so many cruel people out there. And, it's when you were, as well as I do, as giving our musician past, sharing your feelings, going up there and performing and entertaining and putting yourself out on the line is really hard to do. It's super hard. Yes. And when you have people come back and say, you suck and that song's, it's like, it can really just beat you down. And
you didn't really see that before the internet. Like, you wouldn't have very many fans, that would come up to you and just say something really rude. But with social media, there's this anonymity where they can hide behind a username and say just the meanest things. And, that's what they opened up this article with. They talk about, Charlie XCX said that she was stepping back from Twitter after receiving negative comments from fans about the campaign for her forthcoming album Crash. And she's not the only one. There are a lot of artists now that, it's affecting their mental health to get some of these really cruel things that people say. And I think today a lot of fans want access. That's their thing. And that's kind of the currency, but it can have negative mental health effects on the artists. I just kind of Googled it to kind of see who's doing things about it. And according to one study by the University of Westminster, almost 70% said of musicians said they had experienced depression. And over 70% experience severe anxiety and panic attacks. So there are organizations out there, Backline is an organization dedicated to connecting musicians and anyone in their orbit, from roadies, sound engineers, agents, with mental health resources. So that's Backline. A couple others, ASCAP, has a wellness program. Live Nation has a nonprofit called Tour Support. So wherever you are, there are resources, there's help available. And I know for you and I, mental health is so important, and it's something that needs to be talked about even more. And the reason I bring it up is because it's talked about in this article so much, because this social media, just the stress of having to create content every day and compelling content, and then have a large social footprint and have it trending in the right direction, it can be very dangerous for some of these artists.
Oh, absolutely. Charlie XCX said, I have been feeling like I can't do anything right at the moment. I've noticed lately that a few people seem quite angry at me for the choices of songs I've chosen to release, for the way I've decided to roll out my campaign, for the things I need to do to fund what will be the greatest tour I've ever done. I've been grappling with my mental health the past few months, and obviously it makes negativity and criticism harder to handle. And that's an important thing is, when you put yourself out like that as an artist in the social media sphere, you get a ton of negativity and criticism just because people are jerks. And, like to your point, you were, in our era, if you're playing a show, the people that don't want to go, don't go. The people don't give money and then they come in and berate you because they don't like you. It's like, no, they just don't even show up.
That's
so
a good point.
You're playing for people that are there because they want to be. But now with social media, and and I can tell you, we as the father of kids, both you and I, we watch sometimes our kids struggle with this. And I've got a teaching credential, so I'm around teachers a lot and have taught classes myself. And you see the anxiety and stress that it just is around any kid that is so, that's kind of their validation if they have followers, and it's so detrimental to their mental health.
Yeah, I'm so glad that we didn't have social media, excuse me, when you and I were young, because you're right, it causes all sorts of challenges. I'm a big fan of Tegan and Sarah, if you're not familiar with them. These two twin women who have been writing amazing music for years. I actually got to work one of their releases when I was at Sanctuary back in like 2003-ish. And my friend Scott Pappas introduced me, and I just think they're amazing. Plus, they're very outspoken, and I just love everything about them. Anyway, Sarah Quinn, she's the Sarah of Tegan and Sarah. They're from Canada. She said that she derives 0% pleasure from the Google Doc, from this Google Doc containing the band's social media calendar. She said that, when the duo were searching for a new record label, they repeatedly encountered expectations that they would have a widespread and active online presence. Quote, "We're always looking for new revenue streams and opportunities because we're not touring, and I hate to admit it, but our social media reach dictates everything for a band like us. Our online metrics equate to how much a record company will give us for a record, or how much, Coachella will give us to play Saturday at 3 p.m. And I see this every day with my business. People are inherently lazy. And we reported on this, I think, last week or the week before, about the changing face of A&R, the act of artists and repertoire, people who sign artists to labels, and how some of the lazy ones just look at the data. They look at the data platforms to see, maybe what's bubbling up quickly that's unsigned or getting a lot of airplay in a certain market, or, there's a TikTok thing that's blowing up. So in some ways, people can get lazier, but that's a problem, because there are artists out there that don't have that huge social footprint, and they shouldn't be dismissed. It should be a meritocracy. It should be based on the quality of the songwriting and the performance. Like you mentioned earlier, did it make you cry? And I have a couple of artists right now who don't have massive social footprints, but kill it live, and they're recording very important, amazing music. And that's a real frustrating thing for me when a booking agent will tell them, yeah, I couldn't get this thing for you. We need to get your numbers up. And that also brings us to a story we've been talking about lately about fake streams and fake followers and things like that. Why do you think people are doing that? It's because as an industry, we're placing way too much importance on this footprint.
One of the things that there's just a little sentence that I had not thought about, but it's so true. And it says, the problem hits musicians in a unique way. Actors are not expected to self-promote to the same extent and often eschew social media. Writers generally don't have such large followings, nor the parasocial relationships that come with them. So it really is, in music, we are expecting so much. And in many ways, the other facets of the entertainment business do not, in terms of at least the artists themselves or the creators themselves, don't have nearly the same pressure that musicians do. Yeah. And I had not thought about that, but it's so true. And
yeah,
it can be, I can see how it can be over. I mean, listen, it's hard enough to have the pressure of creating great music. That's super hard, by the way. And then to do everything else on top of that. And the article also mentioned that Billie Eilish abandoned Twitter to preserve her mental health. The U.S. indie star Mitski deleted her accounts after the conclusion of her 2019 tour. It's great to be talking about it. I hope some change comes. And I don't know what the change could be, other than like just saying, if you get to a certain level like Billie Eilish, listen, I'm not going to be on Twitter anymore. Forget it.
Well, I think there are some solutions. And I know from talking to artists and managers, one of the solutions is don't try to be all things on all platforms. Find the one that speaks to you and your brand that you love. And a lot of people, that's Instagram. Some people, it's TikTok, whatever it is. Find that thing that you're comfortable with and own that, and don't try to be all things and be on every single platform. But one of the dirty little secrets, and they talk about it in this article, is, people are questioning all the time and effort that musicians spend on social media. Is it worth it? Due to that limited reach, not every post is going to be seen by your audience unless it's boosted, it's a paid for advertisement. And one of the quotes in here is, you see a lot of artists shouting into the void. And I see that too. And we've mentioned this before, that it can't be just buy my album, see my show, buy my album, see my show. It's got to be a dialogue. It's got to be a relationship. And those that do it well, they enjoy it, number one, but they've got this interaction, this dialogue going back and forth. And it should be 90-10, 90% that relationship and that dialogue, and 10% about buy my album, see my show. But I think that with some of these artists stepping away, that will help with their mental health. Having someone help you, it can be part of your street team, and that street team can be mom, dad, boyfriend, girlfriend. You have your core group. I always like to find that core group of people that are evangelists for an artist. And sometimes you can find folks that will either post kind of in your voice or work with you on creating a content calendar and creating those assets and kind of a cadence of that posting that's not going to drive you insane. So you can focus on writing that song that makes people cry. And they talk about, Tegan and Sarah, about they launched this Substack newsletter. And that they found a little bit more joy in. It's got more than 6,000 subscribers. It's a paid for thing at about $6 a month. And Sarah said Substack is us unselfconsciously saying we like our words and our ideas and our stories have value. And I'm seeing this more and more. And again, it's one of those topics that you and I talk about frequently because it's developing so much. And that is, these places like Patreon where people can subscribe to you, Substack. And I think, whether it's Cameo, Thrills.co.uk, there's so many of these OnlyFans. These platforms are evolving and changing. And it comes back to that, 1,000 true fans thing. You don't have to be all things to all people, but you need to find your tribe. And I think when you do, you can exploit them. And I mean that in the best possible way. I just mean monetize. And frankly, as a fan of music like you, I want to be supporting my artists in that way. And social media, unless you're paying to advertise a lot of those posts, they're going to fall on deaf ears and it's going to drive you crazy. So there's got to be a happy medium struck in there.
The article ends with Sarah saying, sometimes I wish the electrical grid would go down so I wouldn't have to do it anymore. But we're in a maze and I don't know how to get out. And that's just an awful feeling.
Wow. Yeah. And she's not alone. I hear that.
No,
I think that's the rule, not the exception.
Yes. I totally get that. And I can see, and then, ultimately, listen, we all only have so much bandwidth. And if you're spending so much of that psychic energy and time on marketing and social media things, and where does that take away from? Well, that takes away from your creative space and your songwriting or your performing duties, so to speak. And it's a challenging time. And, listen, we talk about this as well. Congratulations, there are no more gatekeepers. You are completely responsible for your career. You can upload music and it'll be right next to U2 and Stevie Wonder and whomever else. But guess what? You have to market yourself. You have to promote yourself. You have to be knowledgeable about all of this stuff. You have to write great music, by the way, still, but all of these other things. And boy, oh boy, it's hard to be an artist right now.
Yeah. And listen, if you are one of these artists that is feeling the weight of all of this, reach out for help. There's lots of help out there. If you can't find help, reach out to Mike or me and we will help you. But it's so important. You're important. And, with this social media, it's a challenge. We understand why you're doing it and why you need to do it to help grow your audience. And it's that perception is reality thing. When people are lazy and they just look at your numbers to judge whether you're going to get on a tour or get on, a television show or something. I get it. There's real pressure there, but you need to take care of yourself. So great
absolutely.
Piece in The Guardian. And there was a companion piece in the Wall Street Journal. It was behind a paywall, so unfortunately some of my readers reached out to me that they couldn't read it. But the headline of that one was "Making TikTok Videos Leaves Musicians Feeling Burnt Out." And we don't have to, go into it in great detail. It kind of echoes some of the things in this Guardian article. But the one thing I will say about it is that some of these artists are upset because they're getting pressure from their record companies saying we need to reach this younger demo and we need to do it by TikTok. And as we discuss, TikTok is kind of the easiest platform to gain views, but one of the hardest to gain traction as far as real engagement. Does it happen? Sure, happens all the time. But again, that's a lot of work and a lot of time that you're not spending writing, recording, perfecting your live show, etc.
Yeah, doing the core stuff you need to do. Well, and of course, and everybody, if you're on a label, we've all been in those meetings. Hey, okay, we need to create a viral video here. How do we do that? Well, yeah, you don't just put that as a line item on a marketing plan to create viral video. Sometimes it happens. It usually doesn't. And, but that's not the script that everybody is repeating, unfortunately. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. Well, let's jump up to the next one. Because of course we're going from how bad it is, or all the pressure, and then, but how TikTok creators are redefining success in the music industry. This is from Yash Bagal, and it is so true. I mean, it is unbelievable how, and I don't know about you. I at the beginning of TikTok, I did not see that potential for artists and music and all that stuff. I just didn't. I don't know if you did. You probably did, because
I was in there pretty early, even before it was TikTok. They had some other platforms like Musical.ly and some of those, and I knew those little bite-sized chunk videos were lighting things on fire, and we were creating them for some of our artists. So when TikTok really started to explode, certainly, we were there and our artists were there, the ones that wanted to be there. And I kind of dug into it because it kind of sucks you in. And I'm not talking about, the 16-year-old doing the dance challenge, but I was fascinated by the way music is used. And it's really such a big part of TikTok, whether you're doing a magic trick or whether you're, showing your relatives that you can actually sing and surprising them, and and again, dance challenges. There's so many different things, and it's not just about kids. There's a lot of adult things going on TikTok too. But I really enjoyed this piece because we were just talking about the pressure that some of these artists are under now, to be on TikTok and to grow their audience on TikTok. So the first part of this piece, it has this TLDR, which stands for too long, didn't read. And I use that quite a bit. And I just thought it was funny that what they did is they put together an executive summary. They don't call it that, but you and I talked about this offline, that, in our jobs working at major labels, it was very important to write an executive summary when you were doing some kind of a report, because these are busy executives and they're not going to read every word. In fact, you're lucky if half the people that you do that report for read it. That's why you want to have beautiful charts and graphs that they can glance at and see trends and all of that. But the bottom line to all of that is that we would always create these reports that had a couple of sentences, 3 sentences or a paragraph of, this is what this report says. And with this TLDR, too long, didn't read, at the beginning of this, they kind of have an executive summary. And much of this I agree with. There are a couple of points that I would love to talk to you a little bit more about that I would maybe challenge. But in general, most of this stuff is, I think, spot on. A few points that they point out in the music industry. The distribution of music has been prohibitively expensive and largely unmeritocratic, if I'm pronouncing
Say that
right.
3 times face, pal.
Well, we talk about, meritocracies and all of that, being based on the quality of the music. That's one of the rare things in this article that I would argue with. I don't think distribution is expensive and largely unmeritocratic at all. I think, with CD Baby, TuneCore, DistroKid, it is so inexpensive and easy. Distribution's not a challenge at all. You can get global distribution in a heartbeat very inexpensively. But most of the stuff I think is really interesting. Like music creators have needed substantial capital to ensure that they're on the favorable end of an unforgiving power law to get their music heard in an industry where, like 7% of artists are driving 90% of the streams. Major record labels have been the sole financiers and therefore the de facto determinants of success. Yeah, in the old industry, absolutely. TikTok has radically changed this by making the global distribution of music free and meritocratic, if I'm pronouncing that right.
I believe you are.
TikTok is deep in music, but it's not necessarily a music platform per se. And,
right.
And the thing is that it's not just about, that the cream rises, right? And there still are gatekeepers, and TikTok will get behind something that it believes is going to get traction and will work with labels and creators. So it's not quite a level playing field, but as they point out, that's 1 billion users, and that's a lot of ears and eyes.
Well, and one of the things they kind of talk about here is sort of, leaking what we would kind of sort of call demos, basically, is kind of creating not finished content, but sort of little kind of bite-sized, let's go with demos, just to kind of gauge interest. Yes. and see if that kind of catches fire, and then and kind of ride that interest and comments and feedback to the actual finished version, and then launching that with hopefully a bit of tailwind to kind of give that content an audience out of the gate.
Yeah.
And I was kind of unfamiliar with that sort of strategy, because I can see that completely blowing up in people's faces. It's one of the dirty little. I remember when I was at Warner Brothers Records. In fact, the guy that I was working for was the product manager for The Cult, and he told me that if you heard the Cult's demos, you would be horrified, because they were very. But that's the way it is for a lot of artists. It's like it's really just kind of getting it down.
They're getting the idea down. It's not about
But
conversely, I have some artists that make such amazing demos that we have a term for it. We call it demo love, where you fall in love with a demo, and then when they record the final produced, engineered, mixed, version, you're like, that's. But if you've heard demos by bands like Jellyfish, they are almost exactly the same as what Albie Galutin produced later. It's really more of an arrangement thing and less about because there are artists out there that are so good at crafting their songs and recording them. But then again, there's this really great podcast you've probably heard of called Song Exploder. Rishi Keshaway. It's phenomenal. And he did this one on Weezer, and they were talking about the songwriting process there is unlike anything you've ever heard. And I won't spoil it for you. You got to listen to the podcast. It's really great. But to your point, TikTok now has this really cool ecosystem where, as you described, someone will basically float that air balloon by to see, like, is there any interest in this? And then if there is, maybe they record a little bit better version. It's not the final version. And then they may go into the studio and really do like a full-on version that they put out on the DSPs. And you and I have both seen so many artists that get signed to a major label deal by having a song that's blowing up on TikTok. I was surprised to read that a couple of them had never played a live show. Never, one of them got in the studio and never had seen live, like real instruments. All the music she had made was on a laptop. So she'd never seen and been in the same room with this stuff. So it's a whole new world.
Well, and a couple of these people they mentioned are not even musicians. They were kind of taking sound effects essentially and making kind of tracks. And it's the thing that kind of concerns me is that you're looking, not everybody is a good judge of a demo, and a lot of people can't hear the magic.
That's a good point.
So, you're kind of letting the crowd determine if you're going to move forward with it. But if you're the artist and you're you're passionate about your song, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks about it. You need to finish it. And some of the best songs have been, people didn't like it or whatever. And it's really hard to kind of plow through that. But if you're now determined, letting essentially crowdsourcing your A&R for your songs, it can be good. It can be bad, I think.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of a little bit is, do you remember Big Champagne?
Yes.
So Big Champagne, for those that don't know, was one of the earliest in the space. They were measuring BitTorrents and peer-to-peer file trading, the LimeWires of the world, the illegal version of Napster, et cetera. And what was really interesting about Big Champagne is they tapped in and they could tell what people were downloading, stealing, file trading, whatever you want to call it. And they used that data. They broke it out by DMA, designated marketing area, which is the same as what SoundScan, which is now MRC, did. And they went around to labels and basically got thrown out of every label office until they met at Interscope in Santa Monica with Jimmy Iovine. And Jimmy said, wait a second. You can tell what these fans are actually downloading, and you can tell what's on their computer? And they said, yeah, we can track that. And you can do it by DMA. So what they started doing was kind of what this TikTok thing is they would kind of do some tests to see what songs were resonating. And what they learned really quickly was that they might not be picking the right singles from albums. So they started letting the users decide, like, what were they gravitating to and in what markets. And then they would go after radio play on those tracks in those markets. And they found it highly successful because it wasn't just some executive's opinion or some A&R guy's opinion or what the band wanted to put out. It was really more of like, listen, this is what the people have spoken. This is what they're actually doing. And that's the thing, when you look at Spotify, for example, with their stream count, it's kind of similar to that, where you can just say, oh, wow, here is the EP, the album, the track, whatever. And you can see daily, like what is performing, what's overperforming, maybe what's underperforming. And again, it's like radio call outs, but it's in real time globally.
It's in real time, yeah. Eric Garland was the guy, I believe, who was Big Champagne. Yeah, that was...
Yeah, him and Ethan.
Yeah, such a... I don't know whatever happened to those guys. Are they still around?
Yeah, I still talk to them from time to time. Ethan has an airplane. He took me for a little ride once and up the coast. And,
nice.
And Eric Garland, I still will touch base with him like on socials from time to time, and we'll exchange some smart-ass comments. And
Really?
they're still around.
Smart-ass comments?
Oh, Ethan is the head of digital for Fender now.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. Fender Musical Instruments.
Yes.
Well, and of course, if you've ever worked with artists over the years, you'll know that oftentimes they are the worst judge of the best song on their album. Sometimes throwaway songs that they think nothing of end up being massive hits, and they're like,
right,
wow, I never. I don't like that song that much.
We've all heard those stories of the radio DJ who flipped over the A side and played the B side, and then it's this big hit. I'll also tell you that that's changed in this new music business too, in that the song that you pick, let's say your lead focus track, isn't necessarily like the old days of radio. It's really what is the most accessible to the largest audience, not necessarily the best track. And we ran into this with one of our clients a while back, where they had this amazing ballad that sounded like this 60s throwback. And I pushed hard for them to go with that, because the first time you heard it, it was just infectious and you wanted to play it again and again and again. And we had some resistance. We had the conversations. Anyway, we did put that out, and it was highly successful, more successful than any other track. But, it's not that I'm an A&R person. I rely on my business partner, Jeff Moscow. He puts together those that's what I call music CDs. And he knows a hit better than anybody on the planet. But he understood right away when I was telling him, like, this ballad, this is the most accessible. And he gets it.
Well, and then of course the other problem too is as we're talking about A&R and radio, sometimes an artist will have like that. I don't know which artist you're talking about, or if that was sort of slightly different than what a lot of their other songs were. But sometimes you have that where an artist will have a song that is certainly outside of typically what the way they write or perform, and that's a hit. And then fans buy the album, and that's really the only song that's kind of like that song, and that's another problem. But it's, that there's all kinds of stuff going on with in that world. But it's interesting to see TikTok used in that fashion, which is sort of advanced. Let's just call it advanced A&R, where people kind of they like, okay, I like where you're going here. Yeah, this is good, and then you move forward with it. So
or I don't, and
you
move
maybe
on.
that's right, and that's kind of you talk to professional songwriters, like songwriters that write with others and for others, and you have to be very what's the right word? Kind of brutal with yourself, I suppose. It's like you just cut bait and move forward. It's like you can't fall in love with your own material too much when sometimes you just have to say, okay, that wasn't resonating. I got another one right here, and I got another one.
And I deal with some professional songwriters, and
Mm-hmm.
I concur with what you're saying. There's a really great documentary, I think it's on Amazon Prime, called It All Begins with a Song. And it's about the Nashville songwriter ecosystem, which is unlike any other writing ecosystem anywhere. And there are others in other markets that are really amazing, but there's nothing like the Nashville songwriting community and how they do what you just described, where they get into a room. They work every day. They work 9 to 5, but they work, on Music Row or wherever they work. They go in, they turn on the coffee, and they co-write and they write songs all day long, and then they go home. And seeing that process and how just what you described, they'll go down a path and it'll seem to be working, and if it's not, it's like, you got anything else? I got this idea, and they throw it out, and that's how it works.
Yeah. Well, and especially in Nashville, it's so unique in terms of not only the physical way Nashville is laid out. It's not a small town, but but the business is so condensed into a relatively small area. And of course, in Nashville, a lot of country artists do not write their own material. So there is much more of a old school music industry with like publishing over here, artists over here, and kind of blending the two. And that documentary is fascinating because you really see what it's like to be in a writing room. And like you said, tossing ideas back and forth and tossing out ideas. Like, that doesn't work. And then just moving on. We don't have it today, whatever. And you come back tomorrow. But the importance of keeping at it and basically having that schedule where every day you just work at it. It's and like in the Great Eagles documentary, where he talks about Glenn Fry talks about
Jackson Brown.
Either above or below Jackson
yeah.
Brown. Yes. And Jackson Brown would get up every morning. He said he could hear him like make tea and sit down, and he would just write every day. And he said, that's how you do it. Yeah, exactly. Elbow grease, I think he said. You just keep working at it. So well,
listen, this is a great piece. We're not going to go too deep in all the charts and graphs and things that they're talking about. I just wanted to touch on some of those high level things, but you pulled out of it what I found the most fascinating, and that was the releasing of demos and unfinished versions and that live focus group type thing. And look, TikTok is a beast, and it's breaking artists. But also going back to our other story, from The Guardian, some of these, artists they're being pressured to get involved with TikTok where maybe that's not where they'd like to be or where they want to be. And they're being kind of coerced in some cases to go on there to grow a younger audience. But the last thing I'll say on this article is that audiences can smell something that's disingenuous a mile away. There's got to be some integrity there. So again, focus on those platforms that are true to you, your brand, your music, who you are, and we'll continue to watch the developments with TikTok and all these other platforms.
Yeah. So our last story is, as we kind of mentioned at the top, you do need to get out your acronym decoder ring. Dean Wilson, who manages Deadmau5, talks, this is from Variety, by the way, talks DAOs, NFTs, crypto, and how to protect your IP in Web3.
Yeah.
It's probably worth mentioning what Web3 is, which is kind of this, to quote from Wikipedia, it's an idea for a new iteration of the World Wide Web based on blockchain technology, which incorporates concepts including decentralization and token-based economics. So we have talked about Web 2.0 back in the day. We're still in Web 2.0, but this is kind of the new thing, Web 3 or Web 3.0.
Yeah, I mean that's a good definition, but when people ask me, I say it's a virtual world. Think about it as just a video game, for example, and you're buying a sword for your avatar, or you are selling virtual goods, whether it's a token, an NFT, whatever that virtual good is. That's kind of Web 3.0. When you talk about DAOs, when you said DAOs, those are called DAOs, and that's a decentralized autonomous organization. And stay with me, people. Don't fall asleep. This is super simple. It's just basically a group of people who have kind of pooled their funds and resources to accomplish a task. For example, a virtual world, a social platform, a cryptocurrency. And the reason I bring that up is Dean Wilson and Deadmau5, his real name is Joel Zimmerman, they're very tech savvy and have been on the forefront of this long before a lot of artists have. And so, I've kind of followed, like even EDM in general were the first to really kind of capitalize on NFTs. We talk about it almost every week that, Sherry, who has a Patreon, and if you subscribe to her Patreon, you have access to her database of all of the music NFTs that have been bought and sold, and what cryptocurrency, what wallet, what marketplace, and what they sold for. Were there 10 of them or one of them, and what were the results? And you can click on it and see what it is. But if you look at that and you look at things like Deadmau5 and Blau, EDM was way ahead of most other genres, when it comes to music and Web 3.0 and NFTs. And this piece, as you mentioned, from Variety, and we talked about this a little bit last week, that Variety has really kind of stepped up over the last couple of years.
Yes, they have.
From being just this kind of beautiful entertainment magazine with beautiful people in it to really digging in deep and reporting on what's going on in the music industry and trends. So kudos to our friends over at Variety. But, these guys, when I say these guys, it's Dean Wilson and Joel Zimmerman, they've been on the forefront. Wilson said that they were the first on Minecraft. It was way before NFTs and blockchains, and their fans are into these, tech savvy things. And if you're not familiar with these, and frankly, a lot of people aren't because it's new. You and I like to say, that quote from my grandfather, an idiot is someone who doesn't know what you just found out. This stuff's been around like a week and a half. So let's take a deep breath and just, Google some of these things and look for examples, and you can kind of see if it's right for you and your brand and your music. But, these two have been on the cutting edge of this stuff, and they were talking about their friend Ray Lee, who's part of Audius, who we've talked about. He built something called Upfront back in the day, and it was basically OnlyFans before OnlyFans existed. He just wanted to do that. He wanted to pull everything off of every platform and just have like one subscription model. And I've heard this a lot lately. Once you're in the door, then you have access to everything that he's done. And we were talking, this is probably a year ago. I'm a big fan of this Twitch artist named Jay Gregory. And for the longest time on Spotify, you would go look at Jay Gregory's Spotify profile, and it just had one little square that said, "Follow me on Twitch," right? And I did follow him on Twitch, and what was really interesting, I got to have a couple of calls with him, and just an amazing artist and amazing person. But what was cool is he was recording his new album last year basically on Twitch, and you could go in and watch him record it and interact with him as he's recording it. And he would show you, this is how I make this sound. Here's how I did this beat. Here's how we double track. This is what we're going to do next. And there's a running chat, and he would say, oh, hey, Jay's here. What do you think of such and such? And it was just this Twitch thing was just so different than anything I'd ever been involved in. Well, this kind of speaks to what he's talking about. Like, can you have a community, whether it's through, Patreon or another platform, where you own your fans and you can basically give them access to everything that you do for a subscription. But these are things that, Deadmau5 and his manager were into years ago.
Well, and it's funny in that scenario, God, I would find that so distracting, to be recording with all these people there. That to me sounds horrific.
It's not for everyone.
God bless him. That's not for everyone, without a doubt. But wow. But and I'll be the first to say, and you have so much more of a handle on blockchain technology than I do. But so much of this revolves around blockchain technology,
right?
And just kind of getting your arms and head around blockchain is really, I find a challenge, as I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around all of this stuff.
Well, let me give you like the 30-second elevator version, because
sure.
I get this question almost every day. And, cryptocurrency, all of these things are not really that difficult, but they're just new for a lot of us. So let's take the blockchain and think of that as basically, in your mind, think of it as like a spreadsheet that you can't mess with, that is protected and duplicated, and it's something that is registered, where if you have something that's registered on the blockchain, that it's provable now that you own that NFT or whatever it is. Now you've got this thing that lives there. But there are also things that really, complicate matters, I think, for users when they start getting into this. Like, I wanted to learn how to do this, so I went to buy an NFT. So I bought some cryptocurrency, attached it to a wallet, attached the wallet to a marketplace, bought an NFT, and then I saw, I was charged with these gas fees. Like, what the heck is that? Like, why did I get charged? No one told me about that, right? And so, I looked it up and learned, what it is. And I'll read you like just a sentence, what they say like online. A gas fee is the unit of measurement, the amount of computational power required to perform a transaction on the blockchain, akin to the gas you put in your car. This gas fuels all the specific actions that you execute on the blockchain. And some people don't understand just how much energy is required to do some of these transactions on the blockchain, like mint and NFT. And it's horrendous for the environment. So there's a couple of companies we've been having conversations with. One is called Serenade. The other one is called One Of, which is a Quincy Jones company. And they do a lot of these things for you, which is amazing, but they also do it in a green, carbon neutral sort of way. And I think that's kind of the new way that these businesses are going. I think the old school way of, getting rich quick and maybe selling an NFT for millions of dollars, it's really not about that now. It's really about, think of NFTs, for example, as just a digital collectible that you have, that you own, and it's provable that you own it on the blockchain. And if I buy an NFT for $1,000 and I sell it to you for $10,000, and then you resell it for even more, I participate in that resale. Whereas if you have a piece of art and you sell it, you're not involved with it anymore. But with some of these digital things, you can participate financially later. Anyway, there's a lot of different digital products, things like tokens, and I think that by following people like Deadmau5, these guys are standing on the shoulder, or you'll be standing on the shoulders of giants, because they're a little bit further ahead. And you should dig into this interview. There are questions like, how can Web 3 help address the music industry's biggest challenges? They ask about, you're pretty Web 3 savvy. How do you drive adoption into this space? Things like that. But look, don't feel stupid if you don't know this stuff. We just learned about this stuff, and it's evolving. It's new. But I guess the bottom line to all of this is you have an opportunity with this this Variety article by Jeremy Gilbertson to really kind of learn from people who were early in the space and are finding how they can do it in a way that their fans like, and a way that they can monetize, and something that you can learn from.
Well, and the best kind of little paragraph in this article is when they asked Dean, what would be your advice to independent artists looking to explore Web 3? He said, first of all, do some research and ask a lot of questions. Don't make any moves. Don't do any deals. If you want to stay independent, use all the tools that are currently out there. Don't sign any long-term contracts. Ultimately, don't do anything without finding out who's involved, what it does, where it's going, and who the investors are, what your returns are going to be, and how your IP will be used. Boom.
That's it.
Right there. That's right.
That is it.
Yeah, exactly. So, listen, we all want to jump into new and interesting things, but that's probably the best advice. It's like swimming in a swimming hole, at night. Be really careful. There's a lot of rocks and a lot of stuff going on there. So, on that note, Jay, we do need to wrap up, but let us, of course, thank the wonderful folks that got us here. Thanks to the Music Business Association, Bandzoogle, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and send us your comments when you are listening to our podcast. We certainly appreciate that. And on that note, Jay, let us start our weekend, even though folks will be getting this on Monday morning. So thank you all for listening in to the Your Morning Coffee podcast, Jay, and I certainly appreciate it. And we will be back next week for episode number 82 of the Your Morning Coffee podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.